everyone, welcome back to Underreported Stories, where I cover the news that CNN, MSNBC, and Fox News fail to report on or don't report on enough. And today we have a very, let's call him witty. He's a really witty guest, and his name is Tony Kinnett. He is the Daily Signal's national correspondent and host of the nationally syndicated radio and podcast, Tony Kinnett Cast. Welcome, friend.
Chrissy, it's good to see you, and thanks for calling me witty. That guarantees that there will be absolutely nothing worth wittizing about this entire episode. It's already failing.
No, we go on TV together, and sometimes you'll say something like, how the heck did you think of that? Like, there are just people out there that have a very, it's like same thing with comedians. They're just gifted towards coming up with things that are so witty so quickly. I've developed that over time, but you seem like one of the people that is just born with that gift.
I think there's something about childhood trauma and watching too much Whose Line Is It Anyway while you're growing up that just naturally instills, if I don't get this together, then I'll be bullied for not being able to come up with a good joke. And so it just kind of stuck around after.
I love it. I love the honesty, for real.
Yeah.
And speaking of honesty, a man that is getting absolutely shellacked for being honest right now is Bill Maher. So many of you guys already know, you've heard about this meeting between Bill Maher and Donald Trump and, Trump inviting him to the White House. And I think that the clips of Bill Maher, I think they do him more justice just generally. Like clips of Bill Maher that go viral on social media, they do a lot more justice to conservatives than we give him a lot more credit for those clips. He's a very, very liberal dude, but a classical liberal dude, which makes him slightly more palatable. And he met with the president and used his eyes and came to the very obvious conclusion that Trump is not the Hitlerian meme that the left portrays him as. And I've got to follow up with like an underreported video aspect of it. But just real quick, Tony, what did you make of Bill Maher and Trump's meeting initially?
I really liked the idea of Maher going and outlining the things that he thought was really going to aggravate Trump, that Trump just laughed off. So like throwing, here's the list of times that, you called me a jerk and awful and all this stuff. Would you sign it? And then there's just Trump signing it. And then he just kind of goes through, different events throughout the evening where he was really spicy, perhaps a little spicier than one might be towards a guest at the White House, as in maybe these things aren't things that I would have said from the other side had Biden invited me. But Bill did it and described it. I thought it was really eye-opening just to, again, popping the bubble of, Trump is that evil super mecha Hitler Satan man. And, again, his crowd does enjoy that because they know that that's where the future of that party should be, as opposed to, where it is.
Yeah, I think my point in bringing up that he comes across more conservative in videos is that he really is super, super liberal. So this isn't somebody who's like kind of teetering into the right. And so when he says these things, he's just being brainwashed by becoming, the next Elon or something like that, where he's moving to the right. He's not. He's a lefty. He is on the left. And so for him to say that, you would assume it would have more credence with the left. But he had on Bill Maher, Piers Morgan, and this Washington Post columnist named Josh Rogan on his show. And in this clip I'm about to show you, Josh Rogan claimed that Bill Maher had actually just been duped and manipulated throughout this meeting. Let's watch this video clip together.
I just wanted to report exactly what I saw. I did it to the best of my abilities.
Counterpoint?
As I can be. Yes.
Counterpoint?
Yeah.
Bill, I think you're right in saying that people have made too much of this, okay? It's not the Ulta Summit. You're not Churchill. Kid Rock is not Stalin. Trump sure shit isn't FDR, okay? So, yes, I believe too much has been made about this, but I think you've fallen into the trap. I think that I represent 99% of the internet when I say this, is that you've played the game of proximity is principle. And what people are worried about is not your motivation. We believe you. We love you, Bill. Everybody loves Bill, right? I'm not questioning your motivation. I'm questioning Trump's, okay? And if we can say that you went there in good faith, but maybe, just maybe, he wasn't there in good faith. I mean, you sold him on the Iran deal and he took it in. I mean, give me a break, okay? So the idea here is that your motivation is sound, but what's the impact? And I think a lot of people out there, fans of yours, people who love you, people who are fans of you, like me, I've been fans of
You
you.
don't have to patronize me, dude.
Okay.
I don't know you.
Fair enough.
I never met you.
I'm just saying that this comes from
not
a place
everybody
of
has
love.
to like it.
All I'm
That's
saying
what we
is-
said. There are people who didn't want it to happen at all. You sound like one of them. It's
No,
okay.
no.
But
I'm
did you hear what did you hear what I said?
Yeah.
Like, what is the alternative to not talking? Just sit at your lunch table and don't talk to anybody.
I talk to him. I've interviewed Trump. Here's his interview.
That's not it. That's just not an interview. This was not an interview.
I agree with the principle of engagement. I'm just saying, from his perspective, you have to understand that people out there know, all Americans know, that for him this was a PR stunt, and in his view, you were a prop in that PR stunt. Okay.
You hear the one like awkward liberal lady in the back going, yes, or. First of all, do you remember being in school and the awkward theater kid would try to slam somebody, but they didn't know how to do it? They didn't know how to actually have a confrontation. They go, okay, so like, I'm just going to say it. And he's tap dancing. And he's like, well, like, so we all love Bill. Like we just think he's pretty great. But, like he has to, you just stand and say, I don't like that you normalized someone awful is what he wants to say.
Right.
But he can't say that because Bill can then push him back. And when Bill sees right through all the patronizing nonsense and then you see this Rogan guy get card slapped in front of the audience. You don't have to patronize me. Just, if you don't like it, then you don't like it. And he's like, well, come on. But, I've interviewed him. We've all interviewed him. I'm just as important as everyone here. And it's like, dude, you are trying way too hard. And it comes across as, so cringy. It just takes you back to high school, doesn't it? The cafeteria all over again.
But at the same time, to me, it was a very blatant attack on honest brokers, right? Which is so telling coming from the Washington Post, right? The people who are being the most honest, and honestly worst for the Washington Post, honest and effective, because Bill Maher's not just telling the truth and telling, for better lack of a phrase, his truth. But, that's what he's doing.
Way to go, Oprah.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. But he's also very effective at it, right? Like people see that and they're like, wow, that's a truth teller. When somebody is effective and honest in telling the truth, it bothers people who aren't truth tellers because they don't know what to do in that moment,
It really does. There's so much of a performative aspect of the political pundit sphere where you get out and you expect, and I said this during the Jeffrey Goldberg Atlantic situation, as a former investigative columnist, there is a trick that you can do where you go out and you show 80% of the story, and then the 20% of the story that it's really not any good, you tell the audience that's the smoking gun. And I left that out of the story, the actual war plans of the story. And it's such hackery, right? It isn't true. It isn't real. It's burying the lead, and it's a bunch of other nonsense. And we see this from Rogan. We see this from Jen Rubin over at the Post, no longer over at the Washington Post. And these individuals who then, when they are pushed on the silliness, they say, well, I speak for 99% of the internet, as though that's some kind of a slam or some kind of a dunk. And it's just really embarrassing.
Yeah, actually, he doesn't speak for 99% of the internet, though. That's where I think this echo chamber really comes into play, is like, what is your algorithm feeding you to get you to think that that's a true statement?
Yeah,
because 99% of us don't even operate in that space.
Man Pavloved himself into thinking he has something.
Yeah, no, I don't even understand that. I know Bill calls it out in that clip, but at the same time, when that was the biggest moment for me, where I was like, how do you think 99% of the internet agrees with you? That's just not, basic statistics would tell you otherwise.
There's one writer over at Politico who lives in Indiana with me. So I'm the only Daily Signal guy who lives in Indiana. There's a Politico writer named Adam Wren who lives here in Indiana, and he's on the left. But he also recognizes, because he doesn't live inside that Beltway bubble, that there's an entirely different side of America that doesn't conform to these hyper online to the left opinions.
Yes.
And it makes his writing, even though I don't agree with it, and sometimes I'll text him and be like, dude, what is this garbage that you just wrote? Lovingly. I'm not going to say, well, we all love Bill Maher, but, and it gets the crowd to clap like it's a Christian school chant. Anyway, I mean, if you don't actually try to feel out the rest of the country, how are you going to tackle those 7 swing states you lost?
No, they're not really interested in it, though. They see the world through their point of view, and then they're really not interested in living like the rest of us. And I actually think part of that is the right has a problem with this, too, and I've been quick to call it out. I think the Daily Wire is probably one of the only companies that's doing this. I don't want to say right, because they've got plenty of their own problems in the media right now, but they're doing it right in terms of like they're not living, their people that are writing about the world are not living in DC. I always find it very hypocritical. I'm not trying to slam the Daily Signal. I understand it operates in a space that's different, but like you're telling me you want to write about the world from inside DC and then you want to condemn it? Like, let's move our operations elsewhere. That's why I like seeing companies that have operations in Florida and Tennessee and even in like across the nation. It's just important that we're in there. But I do want to pivot really quick to some other absolute abject nonsense, which is the women who have set us back so far by going into space. So if y'all have not heard about this, Blue Origin, which is Jeff Bezos's space exploration company / company that he created to make himself feel like he has a bigger penis than he actually does. He sent a crew of feminists up into space for about 10 minutes. Seriously, I think I don't even know. It takes me longer.
Yeah, but it took him 3 hours to get ready, to be fair.
Exactly. Which, in their defense, those spacesuits, they did look really good in the spacesuits. I'll give them that. The waists, snatched. Really cute. But that's not the point. The women that went up there was like Lauren Sanchez, Jeff Bezos' fiance, Gayle King, Katy Perry. And this is the underreported aspect of it I want to get to. There is audio footage up there. And when they go up there, they go and they're looking at the moon. And someone in there, we don't know who yet, said, "Oh my goddess," instead of "oh my god."
Wow. Oh my goddess. I can't believe that she had just experienced her inner spirit while she was up there not piloting the craft, but, you know, hanging around. Okay.
Good job, ladies. You set women back with your cringy feminism.
Yes,
good job.
Yes, queen. You go, girl.
They didn't accomplish anything, right? Like,
no.
The only thing they accomplished was being obnoxious. And I'd love to get your take on this because these are the same, you know, elitists. They work in the same elitist circles that these crazy climate activists are. And I will give Katy Perry slightly an exemption because she was I think she was one of the only celebrities that advocated for Rick Caruso to be the mayor of LA that came out publicly and said that. So kind of not saying this about Katy Perry, even though she was the most annoying on this. But the climate activists, Emily Ratajkowski, I think it was Olivia Munn, a bunch of these big celebrity names are coming out and saying like, this was awful for the climate. Yikes.
I love it. So first of all, I love the instant female celebrities who weren't invited on the rocket are now coming out and going, I just can't believe that they would. I flew my private jet all the way to the studio so that I could complain about this rocket that was in the air for a whopping 10 minutes. Oh my goodness.
We're all jealous bitches.
Yeah,
it's true.
Exactly. And then the desperation to have some type of worth, to have some type of purpose, that you can't just be a celebrity and an entertainer. I mean, there are brilliant actresses and actors who are great entertainers and who were only ever entertainers, and that's okay. But they have to be pioneers because, yes, queen, it's not enough just to have entertainment talent. You also have to be a pioneer. And, you know, Gwyneth Paltrow has to be an inventor selling her vagina candles. And you've got all of these other goobers because they recognize that being an entertainer is not as worthwhile to society as being a Stephanie Wilson or a Sally Ride, you know, real female astronauts who actually, you know, drove the rocket, not piloted by a robot for 10 minutes. It's the greatest self-own. I love it so much.
It was really epic. And I'm glad. I love hearing everyone's feedback because it really does seem like, actually, to Josh Rogan's point, 99% of the internet does seem to agree on one thing, and that's that this entire sham of a rocket launch into space was cringy, awful, and nobody needed it.
I've got a hot take on that one, though, real quick,
ahead.
just as a fresh take. I did enjoy the group shot of the ladies as they were getting ready to go into space because everyone pointed out that it wasn't the stage makeup that these individuals normally wear, and they looked a lot more human. Katy Perry in specific, normally she looks totally different than she did in her space photos, and these are normal people who aren't super amazing, oh my goddesses kind of people. And, you know, once that veneer is worn off, it's not as impressive.
That's a really good point. Fair point. All right, let's get into our stories today. Here's what we got. Tony and I are going to do our level best to break down what's going on with a more serious subject. What is going on with Kilmar Abrego Garcia? That is the man who was wrongfully deported to an El Salvador prison. What does the court actually say about this? Also, the Pennsylvania governor's mansion was set on fire, and there's a reason that it is an underreported story. We're also going to talk about the hacked crosswalks in Palo Alto, California, and explain the story of a Ford executive who thinks he's awesome for yelling at old people. So without further ado, let's get into the 5 underreported stories that you need to know. I love uncovering the truth in politics, in media, and even the truth about what's in our so-called cleaning products. Most store-bought cleaning products are loaded with toxic chemicals, hormone disruptors, and allergens. This is stuff that can impact your health, your kids' health, and even your pets. That's why I made the switch to Branch Basics. Their products are completely non-toxic and human-safe. No synthetic fragrance, no weird chemicals. These are plant and mineral-based formulas that leave your home actually clean without compromising your health. If you guys are ready to toss the toxins, head over to branchbasics.com/Chrissy, or you can use the link in the description and use code Chrissy, that's CHRISSY, to get 15% off your first order. Use code Chrissy at checkout. All right, Tony, so the media is telling us that the Supreme Court ruled that the Trump administration must bring back Kilmar Abrego Garcia, this illegal immigrant. He was sent to El Salvador to a gang prison. And now El Salvador's president, Nayib Bukele, met with President Trump yesterday in the Oval Office and said he was not going to be bringing Abrego Garcia back to the U.S. or letting him out of prison. Now, the media claims that the Supreme Court ruled, ultimately, the Trump administration must bring this man back, and he is being called a Maryland resident. But the Trump administration contends that the court's directive to facilitate his return cannot compel El Salvador's cooperation to send him back. So, Tony, I texted you yesterday. I said, hey, what do you want to talk about on the show? And you literally responded, I have it right here. No one knowing how to read a SCOTUS decision. That's what you wanted to talk about. So what about this story is getting, it's bugging you?
I'm shocked, really, because I've seen even on networks that you and I go on quite often, that some of the correspondents chiming in, some of the anchors, they don't read the Supreme Court decision. And we're actually really blessed with 9 justices who, with the exception of Ketanji Brown Jackson, who just may be illiterate in general, I can read all of the other Supreme Court justices' opinions. I don't get lost in the academia word, vocabulary of the ancients, and I don't know what I'm reading. The 9-0 decision in this case simply stated nothing about bringing him back to the United States. I've read it top, down, sideways. I read it in the bath. I read it while I was eating. I read it to my kids. And I know this is going to shock everyone. It doesn't say the United States has to be where this guy is returned to. It says he was sent to this MS-13 gang prison because he was accused of being a member of MS-13. He wasn't given a judicial hearing again, that would be his third, where he gets to say, no, I'm not a member of MS-13. No, not me. This citizen of El Salvador, who illegally immigrated to the United States, was sent to this prison. The Supreme Court said, look, if you can get him out of the prison long enough to give him a judicial hearing, that would be super, because that trial needs to happen. That can happen anywhere. That can happen in the visitor's lobby of the prison, if there is a visitor's lobby. I mean, hey, Chrissy had to stand somewhere when she was recording that video. Maybe it's at Guantanamo Bay. Maybe it's at a Love's gas stop on I-69. I have no idea, but it needs to take place somewhere. But Trump, constitutional crisis, he's disobeying the Supreme Court. You're telling me that Clarence Thomas sat down and he wrote, if you can, give him a little bit of a judicial hearing, great. Like that Clarence Thomas suddenly wrote kind of a liberal opinion on this? No, but nobody reads. Everyone just goes from headline to headline.
Yeah. So I'm going to, in this moment, play devil's advocate. And
do it.
For the listening audience, I'm not saying these are my opinions. I just want to help you formate your own opinions. So I'll play dummy, alternative view. So Tony, since you read this, to me, the punishment of this does not necessarily fit the crime. So he's an illegal immigrant. I think illegal immigrants deserve immediate deportation. We should have zero tolerance about that. And his home country is El Salvador. So maybe he should have gone back to El Salvador, even though we know, he actually might have been, maybe that wasn't the right place for him because a previous judge ruled that there was kind of, his story wasn't, how do I put it? His story wasn't perfect, but there was reason to believe that he had legitimate reasons for fleeing parts of El Salvador, right? I'm okay with the zero tolerance thing. But we're talking about sending this man to the scariest hellhole in the world for doing something that hundreds and thousands of people have done. Like, this is the special place in hell people, like the terrorists, the gang members. Do we put those people who illegally entered in the U.S. on the same level as terrorists and gang members. Like, I'm not advocating for him to come to America, but shouldn't we advocate for him to at least be released?
So the best way to answer this particular devil's advocate is that this is not just another illegal immigrant like everybody else. There are two different United States courts which ruled there was reasonable evidence to suggest this man was a member of MS-13. You say, reasonable? I thought it was, without a doubt kind of evidence. That's true. If you're a United States citizen, if you're charged with a crime in the United States and you're a citizen or you have a specific kind of visa, yeah, then we go through that whole, catamaran. But if you're an illegal immigrant and you come here and go, I promise I'm not a member of MS-13, and then it turns out that, there's, that tattoo on your back that says, all hail Santa Muerte, I don't know, man, that's kind of suspicious. And so we don't have to prove with beyond a reasonable doubt. The administrative error, and this is the one point that the administration's been clear that they goofed, he wasn't supposed to be deported to that prison. However, now that he's there, this is the awkward part, he's a citizen of El Salvador. So if El Salvador gets him back and says, we've been looking for this guy, I mean, this is one of the reasons that foreign policy has serious consequences.
Right, but I'm just going to continue playing devil's advocate. He didn't do anything illegal in El Salvador, to my understanding. The part of him fleeing was his mom had a really successful business and a gang was trying to overtake it. The Trump administration not providing the due process rights, which are not, a lot of people think illegal immigrants don't have any due process rights. They have very minimal due process rights in comparison.
They didn't give him a judicial hearing where he got to say for the third time, I am not an MS-13 member.
Absolutely. So, people are saying, it's worthless, but the process is the process for a reason.
Right. It's on the books.
Ultimately ruled that. But my question is, why does El Salvador, other than the fact that the president is getting money from the U.S. for doing kind of the U.S.'s bidding and having these illegal immigrants in prison, why wouldn't he just do exactly what Trump wants him to do and keep this guy in jail? Why not just release him?
So we don't actually know whether or not the president of El Salvador is going to release him from that prison or move him to a trial in El Salvador. The clip of President Bukele saying he didn't have the power to bring him into the United States made it sound like he was saying, again, from the headline, he's saying he doesn't have the power to release him from prison. He's defying the Supreme Court. No, he said, I cannot send this guy into the United States any more than, the King of England can send some guy into the U.S. You don't have rule over our sovereign borders. But El Salvador does have this guy on record for committing several capital crimes in El Salvador.
So they do.
Yeah,
have,
I mean, this isn't just like gang worries. I mean, again, anyone who comes to the United States illegally, of course they're going to go, I fear for my life in my own country. Yeah, I mean, we've heard that, time after time.
Yeah, we know that those reports are kind of crap, but I didn't realize he had committed crimes in El Salvador.
According to El Salvador. See, this is the problem with asylum claims. It's a Central American country. I mean, hey, El Justicia es loco.
Well, thank you for playing devil's advocate. I hope you guys learned something from that and were able to kind of take away, and hopefully I asked questions that maybe you were wondering about as well. But I do want to get to our next story, which is about Cody Blamer. He's a 38-year-old man allegedly throwing homemade Molotov cocktails at the Pennsylvania's governor mansion, which ended up setting off a huge fire with Governor Josh Shapiro and his family inside. Now, the fire caused really bad, significant damage to the home.
That's
one was
the gorgeous governor's residence. I mean,
yes.
I look, as a guy who loves the state houses and the architecture. Indiana, where I'm from, we've provided a lot of the limestone to build a lot of these buildings. And so as a big, massive freaking nerd, I do enjoy seeing these buildings, and seeing anything destroyed like that with Molotovs is just disgusting. I mean, it's just, I'm obviously, the far worst thing that would have happened would have been any harm to Governor Josh Shapiro and his family. It being done on Passover is extra despicable in this particular instance. As awful as someone throwing a Molotov at a church, in the middle of the night, into Easter, things like that's disgusting. The weirdest thing, though, is how quickly people like Keith Olbermann, whose face is usually covered in piss, according to Keith Olbermann, came out to say, this has got to be some MAGA guy. This has got to be a Trump man going after Josh Shapiro, which, no.
Yeah,
No,
so
that's
Cody
not the case.
Blamer has been charged with attempted murder, terrorism, and arson, and he confessed to harboring hatred towards Josh Shapiro. And one of the reasons why people like maybe Tony and I suspect that this story has not been all over left-wing media is that Cody Blamer is not a Trump supporter. So obviously we're kind of itching towards that. The left probably is not giving this as much coverage as possible. What I was kind of shocked about is that I anticipated that my thought process was, okay, so he's probably not a Trump guy.
Sure.
So he's probably anti-Semitic, and the entire left right now is doing this whole, dance around the pro-Palestinian movement and covering and harboring student visa holders who are pushing the pro-Palestinian agenda.
Yeah,
He's
nothing more
probably
American than
anti-Semitic.
Mahmoud Khalil. Continue.
But really, there has yet to be evidence of anti-Semitism. And I think that the reason why this story has gone so quickly away is that the right, you just did it. You literally just did it. The right condemned it. JD Vance and Trump and everyone got up there and said, and just the whole comment section of Josh Shapiro's tweet saying, we might disagree, but I'm so glad you're okay. We're praying for you. Even Josh Shapiro got up there and said, thank you, Kash Patel. Thank you, Trump administration. Thank you, everyone on the right and the left. The right is acting civil on this. So there's nothing to report on because the left doesn't actually give a single shred of a shit about the news. They care about the right's reaction to the news.
Well, I mean, and they're usually also trying to convince people on the right to kidnap the governor of Michigan. So, if we're
Poor
gonna,
Gretch.
yeah. So if we're gonna talk about the left at government level, but really, you hit a key point here. The issue is this guy was a radical socialist from his own social media posts. I mean, literally posting cross stitches of Molotov cocktails. Dear sweet Lord. I mean, there you go. But my favorite part of this entire story is that it's on the end of a lot of Democrats, not including Josh Shapiro, which have been kind of poo-pooing and tut-tutting the murder of the United Healthcare CEO by Luigi Mangione and Taylor Wren swooning over that goober. And then you've got, Chuck Schumer and all of these other Democrats saying, well, sure, firebombing Teslas and dealerships is wrong, but think about how angry people are. And now here we go. It's yet another example of this kind of rhetoric leading to really crazy people doing awful things.
Yeah, it should also note that he was in a mental facility. I believe he was released he was released the week of. So this is a man with severe issues. And I also believe someone called it in saying that he was also someone to be looked at. He's got charges pending against him for assault in 2023. So to me, this really started to become more of a tough on crime issue, right? We're just letting people that are a problem to themselves and society. There's just no helping people like this in our current situation, in our current administration, by letting them out to commit more crimes.
It's like the meme, say the line, Bart, from The Simpsons. And then Bart lowers his head and he's like, he was previously known to authorities, because it always, it's like, oh, there were red flags. We don't really do anything. We just like to see them flap in the breeze before they commit the atrocity.
Yeah. This wasn't on our stories for today. So if you don't know anything about it, it's totally fine. But I don't know if you guys have heard about this story. It came across my desk right as we were getting in here about this Wisconsin kid.
Oh, yes. 17-year-old.
17-year-old killed his parents, took a bunch of their money, their safe, I believe weapons, and then the family dog, and was found halfway across the country fleeing in an attempt or with attempted plans to kill Donald Trump, assassinate Donald Trump.
Yep.
What is it about this growing sentiment of really radical people thinking that this is an okay end result? Because I don't like to demonize liberals. I say that all the time on the show.
Yeah.
The Bill Mahers of the world, your
yeah.
average liberal that I'm sure is your next door neighbor in Indiana is my next door neighbor here in Tennessee. They're normal, functioning humans who just have different opinions, not wrong opinions.
Mm-hmm.
What the heck is going on with the far left to the point where they used to be crazy and a little funny, but now they're crazy and assassins?
So in this case, I think it's the crazy ends on, the super high to the far right, if you want to call it the far right. This particular guy from Wisconsin is, in fact, without any kind of doubts, this is a neo-Nazi. So this guy's talking about how he wanted to kill Trump because He wanted to start a revolution to save the white race. And the funny thing is, horseshoe theory applies here because you have an individual who, in both cases, who have been told over the last couple of years, if you do not do this, you will die. So on the far right, it's the Jews have taken over, and if you don't do something, then you're all going to be goyim and slaves of the Jews and the ha nonsense. And on the other side, it's, oh, if you don't do this, you're going to be slaves of the white people, and you got to get out there and you got to burn things down because otherwise, no more voting, and women's are going to be baby factories, and it's like some weird 50 Shades of Grey fetish. But if you tell people they're going to die if they don't do anything, and I'm not exaggerating, I ain't hiding the ball here, that is what they're told. You will die if this does not get fixed. Well, how do you fight a life-threatening situation with everything that you have? You actually fight. And so this is the natural result. This isn't a could be. This is where it was always going to end up.
I know, and this has become such an interesting conversation, and we don't necessarily have time to go through like all the rabbit holes of this, but
Right.
I have a group on Instagram. You guys, it's free to join. It's just like on my Instagram page called Real Ones, where we talk about, whatever's on my mind. And I put this in a group yesterday. Do you believe there's a woke right? And 104 people said yes, 40 said no. And I said, I've been thinking a lot about the meaning of the word woke. We use it almost exclusively to discuss the left, but can it exist on the right, and how do you see it manifesting? And I think this is one of those instances. And ironically, I probably am going to get a lot of crap for saying this, but I started listening to Joe Rogan's episode with Douglas Murray and Dave Smith.
You're just dragging us through all the controversial stuff, ain't you? Nice.
Yeah, sorry. I listened to it and I was like, I thought I was going to be like sitting there like, rah, rah, go Douglas Murray. And I listened to it and I was like, oh my gosh, he sounds like Anthony Fauci. Like, it was yikes. The woke right is starting to creep up. And I think in the most extreme cases, it creeps up in this instance, but it's starting to creep. You don't have to opine. I know it's really controversial, but I don't give a fuck. So I'm gonna say
No, that's fine. No, the short answer is yeah, there's a woke right. And anytime you fasten your ideology around what color you are and what gender you are instead of what it is that you believe and, actual history, you got to do backflips over, well, Winston Churchill was actually the villain of World War II, because you're retarded and you can't read. And you make those kind of statements, so controversy isn't really a bother for me. Yeah, I mean, of course there's a woke right, because there are people who have nothing more to add to the conversation than, I'm white, so I must be smart and useful. And it's like, no, because anyone who's black or Jewish or Asian or Spanish or whatever, whatever you want to stick in as a nationality, as a gender, as a color, means nothing. As long as you're not French, you have something you can contribute to this world. And that's something we all can get behind.
There it is with the witty, As long as you're not French, fuck the French people. They're the worst.
And David French. Like any kind of French that's it all. And French's, the mustard, overrated. Get it out of here.
I love it. All right, well, let's get on to our next story. It's a little bit more levity to the conversation. So there are these crosswalk signs in Palo Alto and a couple other cities across California that were hacked to play AI-generated voices of Elon and Mark Zuckerberg. Let's watch this video. This is from NBC. They kind of aggregated a bunch of TikToks from the incident. Let's watch.
Dun, 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 dun,
Wait.
dun, dun. It is infamous.
Hi, this is Elon Musk. Welcome to Palo Alto, the home of Tesla engineering. They say money can't buy happiness, and yeah, okay. I guess that's true. God knows I've tried. But it can buy a Cybertruck, and that's pretty sick, right? Right? Fuck, I'm so loud.
It's real.
Hi, this is Mark Zuckerberg, but real ones call me the Zuck. It's normal to feel uncomfortable or even violated as we forcefully insert AI into every facet of your conscious experience. And I just want to assure you, you don't need to worry, because there's absolutely nothing you can do to stop it. Anyway, see ya.
It's so funny. It's so
I
good.
want to see it pushed further. This is what AI was meant for. I want to see all of these little I've always hated this. Whenever you go to the mayor and it's like, hi, I'm Mayor No One Cares, Mayor of wherever. And he's like, I'd like to welcome you. And you're like, I'm just laying over at this crappy airport, please. Like, why are we doing? I want to see more of this. This is the peak of society.
Yeah, this is what we made AI for, to make jokes, okay? We weren't trying to be serious with this. We need jokes out of it.
And plus, like, being taken completely out, like the baseball game where someone hacked the speakers so that Carl Weiser went, Jimmy's mom, like right as someone was about to throw a pitch. Again, that's peak millennial into Gen Z humor, and that needs to be the way the pranks are done. I want to see this on the floor of the house. Some of you out there, please don't hack anything. You got a Bluetooth speaker, though? Make it happen.
Absolutely. So I do want to not make this serious because it's so funny and there's so much levity to it. But this comes at a time when, Tesla stocks are really down. Meta is under this microscope right now after a whistleblower revealed that Meta has allegedly been compromising our national security, working with the Chinese Communist Party. They're no better than TikTok.
I, for one, am shocked.
Oh, yeah, shocked. Yeah. They're sending all our information over to China. They're storing it there. I watched this video and I was like, okay, funny. But also, I really thought the tech giants would be doing better under the Trump administration. They all went in and kind of sucked Trump's metaphorical dick the first week of the administration. And other than Elon, who his Tesla stocks are down because he's doing good work, it's not really been the case that the big tech overlords are doing well under Trump. Are you seeing that? Do you disagree? And why do you think that is or isn't?
Well, I don't think we've really been in the Trump administration long enough to see any of the big tech bros doing really well or really poorly. I think there's this idea that, we flip into the first couple of months of an administration and then boom, all of the policies that the guy campaigned on are now in full effect. I don't really see it. What I do see is the natural end result of the fire that Zuckerberg and then Jack Dorsey and some of the other big tech bros, Jeffrey Bezos being one of them, were playing with. And now they're starting to see the end results of this. And, there's this idea that you can get away with things. I don't think so. I think eventually your sin will find you out. And I think that what we've seen with Facebook and with Meta and Instagram, whatever, is this playing with fire that, yeah, we can just give this stuff to China. No one's ever going to know. And everyone already knows that we're doing it probably. So
everyone's going after TikTok for it, so they won't be looking at us.
And when you play with that fire, eventually you get burnt. And I don't know, the secret of how Trump's going to, organize anything against this, whether Congress is going to do anything. I'm sure we'll have a committee hearing where a bunch of old people don't understand the internet. A series of tubes on the Facebook. That's great. American standard. But I don't know. I kind of leave that one up in the air.
Yeah, the only thing that's striking me as might be very interesting is JD Vance is just been such a wrecking ball with all of this antitrust stuff. And
oh yeah,
he's put his people over in the over in places where they can go for Google and go for these big tech giants, which is just really fascinating to watch. So I think it's yet. I think you're right. It's yet to be able to say this is good or this or bad. I just thought it would be better than it is, if that makes sense.
Well, all I can say about Vance, who, of course, is the best looking vice president we've ever had.
You say that because you kind of look like
a little bit. But I can say this. If Zuckerberg has any NCAA trophies, he's in trouble because Vance snapped it right in half.
Yeah, that was I found it to be such a wholesome moment. If you guys haven't seen this, JD Vance went to Ohio State. Ohio State won the NCAA national championship in football. And then he got the trophy and kind of accidentally broke it in half. Very funny the way he handled it, the humor, all of it. I loved it.
Broke my heart because I thought that trophies were well built. It's the championship trophy. You think it'd be a solid mass of awesome.
It's made in China. Made in China. This is why we need American production here. It's made in China. Anyway, there is a popular YouTube channel called Jubilee. I'm sure you are familiar with it. For those in the audience who don't know what this is, really what it is, it's a super mega popular YouTube channel. If you've seen those, 25 liberals debate Charlie Kirk, 25 liberals debate Ben Shapiro, or 10 traditional men debate 10 progressive men. Super fun debates that end up going super viral. Big channels like Amala and all these channels that will react to these Jubilee videos. Okay, so Jubilee as an organization is getting a ton of pushback for allegedly being too conservative. But the reason they appear too conservative will not shock you. One of the Jubilee executives actually spoke out about this, and I'm going to show you that video right here.
One critique that we actually have heard a lot about Jubilee is, why are you featuring so many Republican pundits or so many big Republican voices, but not as many Democratic voices? And it's something that frustrates me, because I agree. The reason was that when we were going out into these spaces, we found such an appetite from the right to say, absolutely, no questions asked, I'll be there when you want me to be there. I'll travel to you, etc. And then when we were speaking with folks on the left, there was a huge hesitation, and this is a generalization, but by and large, there was a, I don't know if we want to do that. Can you give us all the questions in advance? Can we carefully edit it? And it was such a different initial kind of paradigm by which we were talking with them. But I think since the election, we're starting to see a lot of differences, which I really welcome, and we're hoping that both sides will participate.
When I watched this, I felt so justified about my feelings about the left, about how they just don't want to debate. And that was inevitably their downfall, is my ideas are better. I wouldn't even bother breathing the same air as someone who has different ideas, which is, to my point, being woke, not even thinking of somebody else's ideas as different or competitive, but just straight up wrong. But what was your initial reaction to all of this?
It reminded me of an interview/debate that I did on C-SPAN with David Pakman. So David Pakman, big podcaster over on the left. And if you're wondering who the big podcasters are on the left, you have David Pakman, and then you have the guy who openly bragged about how his wife cucked him and divorced him. So anyway, David Pakman, the one who I would hope hasn't had that situation occur, he sat down with me on this debate on C-SPAN, and I don't do the normal talking point debating things. You might have picked up the ADHD sends me off in different tangents. And he starts giving these regurgitated answers to the question with the anchor. And I don't do that. I just go off and drag him kicking and screaming down the rabbit hole. And he doesn't know how to answer, because if you come into a debate with pre-prepared answers and anything changes at all, anything goes amiss, all of a sudden you're like Kamala Harris, like trying to eat the microphone, awkwardly laughing. There's nowhere to go. When you have 25 people surrounding you, there's no on the rails. You can't have all of the answers present. And there's no way for a liberal to just go, it doesn't matter, because conservatives don't play that game. They don't go for that. So it's a very weird situation to expose yourself in that way, especially in a heated campaign where God knows how to describe what Harris or Tim Walz were doing. So
no, I think
justified's a good word.
You're saying it without saying it, that like we, as conservatives, we think a little bit more. And that's not in a derogatory, like they don't think. It's just like we're constantly nuanced, challenging our own thoughts, like getting there. And that's because more often than not, conservatism advocates for that. It advocates for the debate. It advocates for questioning. There's a lot of inter-party fighting between the neocon and the MAGAs. And it just exists. It's natural and inherent on the right. And the left tries to weaponize that, like, that's bad. But if you hear the one thing that conservatives always say about liberals, they think liberals do well in politics, but not in culture, is they're unified. But that unification in their culture is really to their detriment, because they know how to give talking points and regurgitate things, but they don't actually know why they believe it.
So one of the most eye-opening things that I have seen, and has actually changed a lot of how I've operated since the election, is the interview between Jen Psaki and Jon Stewart, where she's complaining that, and a lot of people completely miss why this interview is important, but Jen Psaki is whining about how the right, like, we all support each other. Here I am on your show. You have been on my show. Either of us has a pretty equal chance at some point in our career of being on Gutfeld, Tucker Carlson, Ben Shapiro, and on and on and on down the list. Because that's what we do, right? We exchange ideas. There's 4 factions on the right. You've got tradcons, you've got Bushian neocons, you've got libertarians, and then you've got kind of the corporatist holdouts. Those are the factions, and they argue and they fight and they wrestle and they try to come to terms with things. Well, on the left, you don't have that. You have points that come from the top down, but they don't interact. You'll never see Jen Psaki on Joy Reid's show. You'll never see those two actually out there on the other major political anchors. And so what the right does is we foster these kinds of conversation and debates, and therefore it sharpens us. Iron sharpeneth iron, to get scriptural. But it's wild to watch the left have no idea whatsoever how to exchange ideas and sharpen anything. So you get the LGBTQ theater kids screeching about their pronouns until the party dies.
Yeah, you just made the perfect segue. I could talk about that subject all day, but you did hit on the LGBT pronoun people, and that leads us into our fifth and final story, which is this executive at Ford admitting that he yelled at an elderly man in a wheelchair for watching Fox News. So Barrett Evans is this chief learning officer, aka DEI hire.
Chief learning officer.
Exactly. He's at Ford, and he posted on social media, he posted this, that he saw an elderly passenger watching Fox News on his flight from San Diego, and that elderly couple, man and woman, deplaned. They got into airport wheelchairs, and he said his filter was, quote, malfunctioning, aka he couldn't not be a dick, and told the elderly couple, love to see you supporting DEI. And when this old man was like, no, I don't support DEI, he just goes off on this elderly couple for using the wheelchair service. He claims wheelchairs are subsidized costs provided to level the playing field for elderly people. Okay. That's not DEI.
That was
That's
a great
certainly
impression,
not the same
by the way.
thing.
10
They're
out of 10.
old and they can't walk. They're not getting wheelchairs or getting leveled playing fields because of their skin color. And honestly, I don't know what's worse. I need your opinion. Is it worse that he yelled at the old couple over perceived, not even known, perceived political differences, or the fact that he posted this on what seems to be LinkedIn and made it out like he's somehow a morally superior person for yelling at old people?
I want to check one thing real quick. Ah, there we go. Okay. No, I think the worst part of this is that like weird suburban white and men and women in their mid-40s who have nothing of substance to add to their life at all, except for their political activism, because they have no faith, they have no family, they have no community that they invest in. They have nothing of substance to give to the world. So they've made politics their religion. They've made it their idol. And so they now have to walk around seeking attention and validation. And you know, I come from education. We used to do a lot of education writing together.
That's how we became friends.
This is one of the things that frustrated me the most as a teacher. I would have colleagues who were obsessive with getting kids to affirm their gender, affirm their politics, affirm whatever about them, because no one else was going to do it, because there was no common sense to saying, yeah, cut your genitals off. I guess unless it's, you know, the second Jackass movie. So, I mean, I'm looking at this clip or all of the other clips where it's some liberal losing it in public, and they're looking for the applause, right? Everybody clapped. And instead, they're not getting that. They're figuring out, well, they're not figuring out, the rest of society is figuring out, that the era of scorn and cancellation of the target of the screaming is over, and the age of getting rid of these learning officers and other gay and retarded titles are really now at an end.
Yeah, it's got to come to an end at a certain point. And this wouldn't be acceptable behavior for any employee or executive at Ford, especially one that is probably prohibited by Trump administration, executive orders. But before we wrap today, Tony, I tell my audience that I'm their liaison to TikTok, and apparently your liaison to TikTok as well. I was downloading and sending Tony every single video last night because no TikTok. But every single year, these California influencers head out to Palm Springs. They go to Coachella, which is a 3-day music festival. And it's getting more and more ridiculous because it used to be like this, like Woodstock, camping, hippies, flower crowns, all that shit. Now it's devolved into whatever the fuck this video is.
I'm camping at Coachella for the very first time, and I wanted to bring a piece of my apartment out into the desert. I already set up the canopies, but let's set up the rest. Of course, we got to start with the tarp, and did I bring an entire rug out into the desert? Yes. I was really going for like classic vintage camping site, but a little bit more elevated, so I just brought this folding table, put this tablecloth on top for some color, and no campsite's complete without a bed that I of course had to add my personal touch to. And for seating, I brought this director's chair and a few collapsible chairs, and as much as I wanted a vintage cooler, I couldn't find one in time, so this one's gonna have to do. I did, however, find this really cool vintage trunk for all of my clothes that I packed in.
He couldn't find a vintage trunk in time. We've
I love
lost
it.
the fucking plot. You're
I love
camping and listening to music. Why the hell are you bringing a full bed? If you guys are in the listening audience and you have not seen this, I encourage you, head over to Spotify, YouTube, Rumble, wherever you watch this. You have got to watch this video. I had a loss
Allow
for
me to
words.
paint you a word picture. Imagine a really, really Walmart-ass commercial where this guy's like, watch me go to my town's Walmart and then one antique store on the way back, and then like fill up a cart to go camping. And do you see what the dude's wearing? He's wearing like boxer shorts, a black polo that is tucked into his boxer shorts in the front, like he's a girl, because girls do like the front tuck thing, right?
Yeah.
Like you guys, yeah,
It's cute.
guys don't do that. And he's wearing like the cowboy boots, no boot socks, right? So these are like black cowboy. I mean, it looks like I the
It looks
words
like
I wanna
something
use
I've
are
worn
not
to Broadway.
appropriate for this podcast. It's just he's dressed like some Insta girl out going to see Broadway. Apt.
Yeah.
And then it's just awful. And then he zooms out. I'm expecting it to at least look good. You know, you got the apartment looked nice, so the
Mhm.
tent's gonna look nice. No, it's like awful. Oh, it hurts me. And
I
yeah,
know.
this is Coachella. Bernie Sanders talked to everyone rearranging their apartment tents at Coachella.
Yes, I know. If you guys didn't see, Bernie Sanders showed up at Coachella and everyone like kind of started booing and then wooing, and it just like, you know what? I was toggling between whether I was going to say this, but I grew up going to Lollapalooza, and I'm a good, like, I was a really good kid until I turned 18, and then I uncovered alcohol and became an absolute
Had
wild
yourself
child.
a Rumspringer, did you?
Yeah, for like 2 years, I just like absolutely lost my mind.
But
Ugh,
were you
Michigan
able to
State,
find
like,
a vintage cooler? Because that's the
I
standard.
was not. I was not. But let me just say, I've been to many a Lollapalooza on many different substances. And if a politician came up there, I would have whooped and booed and made noise and been looking 8 different ways with my eyes crossed. No one knows what's going on. That was not an effective campaign strategy in the slightest. Everyone is coked or mollied off their asses. Let's be real.
And to be fair, usually those festivals are where you're supposed to get the good Molly. Like if you're actually going to talk about like the high quality stuff, it's supposed to be reserved for those festivals, not some Midwestern Ripon College in Wisconsin acid trip at a rave.
I'm not going to attest to whether that's true or
I
not.
am not going to tell any more stories on that particular line.
Oh my gosh. Well, if y'all enjoyed the comedy duo of Chrissy and Tony, I'm glad you guys tuned in. But Tony, if people want to hear your show, I know you have 2 shows. One that's early in the morning at Top 10. Is that what it's called? Right?
Yeah, the Top News in 10, they decided that I should suffer all day instead of just
All
some
day,
of it.
yes. So where can people find you on socials and where can they listen to you?
You can find me on Twitter at TheTonus, TheTonus, don't ask. And then over on YouTube at Daily Signal. We keep it there. You Google it, you'll find it.
Absolutely. Well, guys, if you are a real one and you made it to the end of today's show, will you drop the palm tree emoji as an homage to those iconic Coachella palm trees? Thank you
And a
guys so
vintage
much.
cooler as well.
Yeah. If there's a vintage cooler emoji, sure, use that too. Thank you guys so much. I'll see you back here for a solo episode on Thursday. Bye. Thanks so much for watching. If you liked what you heard, please be sure to subscribe and leave a comment about how beautiful, intelligent, and funny I am. And if you want more content, click right over here for more videos and clips of my show. I'll see you back here next time. Bye!